With Season 3 of Ascendance of a Bookworm around the corner, I thought it would be fun to make a recap video to summarize the events in Season 1 and 2 of this wonderful anime. If you haven't ever watched it, I know what you're thinking. Ugh, not another Isekai, right? Well, trust me, this one is worth checking out. If you've seen the latest promos for Season 3 and are wondering about all the hype surrounding this anime, and if you're wondering what it's all about, then this video is for you. And if you've already watched the anime, then just please enjoy this refresher before the new season starts. Alright, let's get started. The series opens on a flash forward to episode 26. The High Priest gives Mine a red potion and asks her to wear a magic circlet. She falls asleep and the High Priest begins to explore the memories of how she became Mine. Urano Motosu was a Japanese college student who loved books. She died after being crushed by her book collection during an earthquake, and her final prayer was that she wanted to live her next life surrounded by books. Her next conscious thought is of waking up in the body of Mine, a sickly 5-year-old girl bedridden with a life-threatening fever. A strange woman enters the room. At first, Urano doesn't understand her unfamiliar speech. However, her memories combine with those of Mine, and she realizes that this is her mother, and her name is Aoife. Mine is instructed to stay in bed until dinner, but instead she goes searching for a book to read. To her dismay, there seem to be absolutely no books or writing anywhere in the house. Over the next 3 days, Mine struggles to adjust to life as a commoner. Her family lives in a dirty townhouse without plumbing or electricity, and while her parents are affectionate, she feels suffocated by the love and familiarity of people she barely knows. Everything is a struggle. She is so small and weak that merely opening the door to leave the room takes monumental effort. When Mine has fully recovered from her fever, she asks to go with her mother to the lower city market, eager to find a library or a bookstore in this new world. She looks on in wonder at her medieval-esque new world. However, there seems to be no written language in the entire city except for numbers used to price items at the market. The only glimpse of books she gets is one that is stored behind glass in a case. She asks to read it, but the merchant tells her that books are far too valuable and rare to entrust to someone else so freely. In fact, most books are only owned by the nobility. Undeterred, Mine decides that if she can't buy books, she'll just have to make them herself. Aside from the lack of books in her new life, there are some other serious drawbacks to living as Mine which our protagonist must overcome. The first is a lack of hygiene. Everything, including her own person, is super dirty. So when her sister Tuli returns from foraging in the woods with an avocado-like merle fruit, Mine uses her knowledge from her time as Urano, extracts oils from it, and uses it to make homemade shampoo. It leaves her hair glossy and sweet-smelling, and her sister and mother are eager to use it as well. This becomes a theme during the rest of the series. Our protagonist has no powers or special abilities other than the vast knowledge of things from her time living on Earth, and she will use this knowledge to her advantage from this point on. The next drawback is her frailty. She is so sickly that she can't even go out of the house without anyone carrying her. When she and Tuli go to the city gate to bring something to their father, who is a captain there, Mine is too frail to walk the entire way, but the neighborhood boys Lutz and his brother Ralph volunteer to help carry her. Again, people will either have to walk super slow to match her pace or carry her around throughout the rest of the series because she's either too slow or weak to move around. The third drawback is her inability to get her hands on paper and ink to make the books that she so wants. While at her father's workplace, she learns that parchment and ink are prohibitively expensive, and her father cannot afford to buy any on his salary. Additionally, she can't read or write yet. However, Otto, one of her father's co-workers and a former merchant turned soldier who can read and write, volunteers to teach her and gives her a second-hand stone slate to practice her writing on. As winter approaches, she begins to formulate plans to make her own paper, drawing inspiration from Egyptian papyrus. Sadly, her plans to make her own papyrus end in failure, so she remains stuck at home for the entirety of that harsh winter, helping out at home by making baskets for winter handiwork, all the while longing for spring to come so she can make tablets to write on, drawing inspiration from the ancient Mesopotamians. While winter is underway, we learn a bit more about this world and the neighbors. The neighborhood boys drop by, and we learn how hard winter is on poor commoners, where many go hungry as food begins to run low. To help improve their food situation, Mine invents a dish called Peru cakes, which uses leftover pulp from a winter fruit called the Peru, and is something that would ordinarily be discarded as animal feed. This helps keeps the boys' tummies full, and in return, Lutz says that he will lend her a hand whenever she needs help in the future. During winter, Mine continues to learn her letters over at her father's workplace and displays such skill at doing math calculations there that she begins to help out in exchange for more slate pencils and more reading lessons. Though in this world, children aren't supposed to work until after the baptism, but oh well, Otto really needs the help. Finally, Mine makes a flower hair ornament for Tuli to wear during her upcoming baptism, using a crochet hook she asked her father to make, something that has never ever been seen in that new world. With the arrival of spring, Mine wants to jump headfirst into her bookmaking project. To do so, she will have to go to the forest to dig up the clay for her tablets. However, her father tells her to focus on building up her stamina first and improving her health, and he forbids her from going to the forest until he is satisfied with her progress. It takes a really long time for Mine to make it to the forest, and once she does, she's still too weak to complete her task. Lutz, however, helps her out and does the hard work of digging up the clay for her. And after she shapes the tablets, she is able to write on them. As they work, they talk about their dreams for the future. Lutz wants to be a traveling merchant, and she wants to be either a librarian or sell books. To her horror, some of the neighborhood boys stomp on the clay tablets as they dry, unaware of their importance. Mine loses her temper and her eyes change color, frightening the boys and alarming Lutz and Tuli. Lutz calms her down and promises that they'll all work together to make new tablets. That second batch is ruined by the rain, and the final batch crumbles and explodes in her family's oven when she puts them there to bake. Time for another plan. Summer comes. Tuli has her baptism and wears her flower hair ornament. It's the first of its kind in this new world, and it draws the attention of many people. As for Mine, the inability to make her books is killing her, literally. Inspired by the wooden scrolls, otherwise known as mukang, from the Yellow River Valley culture, she tries to make a scroll out of wood tablets, only for her mother to end up burning her materials for firewood after she and Lutz painstakingly worked on them. Distraught, Mine's eyes once again change color and she collapses with a dangerously high fever. Lutz encourages her to not give up and brings her a less flammable kind of wood. However, her mother accidentally burns that as well. Mine gives in to her frustration and despair, and as she begins to think of giving up on her books and on life altogether, her fever intensifies. However, as she remembers Lutz's encouragement and the promise she made to introduce him to Otto, who knows all about the merchant trade, she feels inspired to keep going. Her fever goes down, leaving her wondering about the nature of her illness. Once she gets better and is able to go out, she goes to the gate and arranges a meeting for Otto and Lutz to talk about Lutz becoming a traveling merchant. Mine thoroughly prepares Lutz for his meeting with Otto, washing his hair with shampoo and advising him to wear his best clothes to make a good first impression. To her surprise, Otto brings along his brother-in-law, a merchant called Benno. He immediately notices her glossy hair and hair stick. When he inquires about her shampoo, however, she tells him that the details are confidential. Otto tells Lutz that becoming a traveling trader is a foolish idea and suggests that they become merchant apprentices instead. Benno asks the two children what they plan to achieve as merchants, and Lutz eventually arrives at his new goal, to make all of Mine's ideas become a reality. Meanwhile, Mine explains that while her best-case scenario is to become a librarian, her backup plan is to make and sell paper made from plants. She says that she can have a prototype ready by their baptism next summer, or in about a year. And Benno agrees to take them on as apprentice merchants if they succeed. Delighted, the two children get ready to leave. However, Mine hurries back when she remembers that she wanted to ask Otto a question. She asks them whether they know of any illness that causes sudden fevers. Both of them say that they don't, but privately, Benno guesses that it may be the devouring, a lethal illness. Mine and Lutz begin to make paper using the washing method, which she remembers from her life as Urano. However, they don't have the tools to make the tools that they need to make their paper. So she strikes up a deal with Otto to trade him some of her shampoo for his wife to use in exchange for nails so that she can make the equipment that they need to get started. When they return from the woods, Otto meets them at the city gate and gives them an invitation from Benno, asking them to join him for a meeting. At the meeting with Benno, he explains that they should have come to him first for help with the nails and supplies, since the Gilberto company, his company, plans to claim the sales rights for the paper they produce. Benno tells them that he'll fund all the supplies for the prototype in exchange for the recipe for shampoo and arranges for them to have a workshop. He tells them that once the paper is developed, they will receive a % of the profits as royalties. However, Mine says that she wants to retain the production rights to paper and wants to give Lutz exclusive sales rights to ensure job security. Benno agrees and has them finalize the deal using contract magic. Lutz is surprised and wary of how comfortable Mine seems during the negotiations, easily understanding the concept of collateral and doing math without an abacus, as well as being able to stand on equal footing with adults. On their way home, he asks her, "Are you the real Mine?" When they meet again, Lutz confesses that he was upset at seeing Mine handle everything alone, saying that he felt unneeded. He assures her that he doesn't hate her, however, he no longer refers to her as Mine. Lutz and Mine began to work on their paper prototype in earnest, but Lutz still seems to be acting strange and is more withdrawn than usual. He also seems suspicious about her in-depth knowledge of papermaking, something which the Mine of this world has never tried before. Once they finish their first batch of paper, Lutz asks who Mine really is, and she admits that she isn't the original Mine. When he lashes out at her, she becomes angry and says that she wouldn't have chosen to steal such a sickly, frail body. He asks how long she's been Mine and is surprised to find that all this time, as he was forming memories and solidifying his friendship with her, it was always with Urano Mine, not the original Mine. In the end, he ends up accepting her for who she is. With their paper prototypes complete, they bring them to Benno for him to test, and they celebrate when he gives them passing grades as he is thoroughly satisfied with their work, which means that after their baptism, he will be taking them on as his apprentices. Benno pays Mine and Lutz for the prototype. When Mine shows him the flower hair ornament she made for Thule, he asks the children to go with him to the Merchants Guild to register for temporary guild cards, which will allow them to do business before their baptism. The guildmaster, however, isn't inclined to give them temporary guild cards, but is swayed when Benno has Mine show him the hair ornament. It turns out that the guildmaster has been eagerly searching for the craftsman of that hair ornament so he can commission a baptism accessory for his granddaughter Frida. The guildmaster approves the registration and orders a hair ornament from Mine. Lutz and Mine meet Frida at the Otmar company to show her the prototype and to consult with her to make sure the hairpin matches her outfit. Together they pick out a color scheme, select the thread, and they agree on pricing for not one but 2 hair ornaments. Frida takes a liking to Mine and tries to recruit her to the Otmar company, her family's company, but despite all the inducements to do so, Mine declines, thanks in part to Lutz being there to remind her to stay on her guard against Frida. 1 month later, the hair ornaments are completed and Mine delivers them to Frida. As they talk, Mine explains that she's naturally frail, and Frida asks if she has a devouring, the same illness that she herself has. Mine learns that the devouring can't be cured, only controlled, and using expensive magic tools at that. Frida does give her a bit of advice and tells her that having a goal and not losing sight of it will help her control it. Winter arrives. It's been more than a year since Mine's awakening in the new world. As Frida warned, her fever seems to be growing stronger even though Mine tries to shove it in a metaphorical box and tries to keep her emotions under control. She admits to Lutz that it's flaring up more often than before, and as he gives her a piggyback ride home, he breaks down in tears. Lutz resolves to help Mine make all of her product ideas to save money and find a way for her to survive. They meet with Benno to discuss product ideas. Just as they optimistically make plans for spring, Mine collapses with a dangerous fever, and Benno calls for a carriage to take her to the guildmaster's house. Mine awakens in Frida's house with a shattered magic tool bracelet on her wrist. It reduced the symptoms of the devouring by drawing off excess mana, but eventually broke when it reached capacity and can no longer be used. Frida estimates that Mine has less than a year before her fever once again overwhelms her, and tells her that the only way for her to live a long life is by making a contract with a noble to become a mistress in exchange for access to magic tools. She herself has already signed a contract to become a concubine when she comes of age, and tells Mine that if she chooses to remain with her family, she is certain to die. Mine pays the guildmaster for the magic tool used to treat her illness. He's disappointed since he planned to use her debt to force her to join the Otmar company as an apprentice merchant. Mine and Frida spend the day doing fun activities, one of which is going to the kitchen to spend some time with Frida's cook. After seeing the ingredients they have on hand, Mine invents, or rather introduces, pound cake to them, blissfully unaware that she is giving away an extremely valuable product for free. After all, in that world, sugar is an expensive new ingredient that is worth its weight in silver, and it is so rare that very few people know how to work with it just yet, and the pound cake recipe was extremely good. Mine's family is deeply relieved that she recovered, believing that her illness has been permanently cured. However, after her mom finishes her baptism outfit, which is Tuli's dress but modified to fit Mine, she calls a family meeting and explains her true circumstances. She admits that the magical tool that Frida gave her did not cure her, but rather bought her more time, and that it cost a fortune. She tells him that without tools like those, she is likely to die soon. Her family is distraught at the thought of her dying within a year, but they also can't bear to lose her forever to the nobles. She tells him that she would rather die with her loved ones than live a long life alone in the nobles' quarter, and her family agree to let her live as she wishes, even though it means that she will die. Mine begins to make plans under the assumption that she will die before the next winter. She decides not to take an apprenticeship with the Gilberta company since she is too frail to handle the usual work of an apprentice merchant. She also sells the paper-making rights to Benno, while Lutz retains sales rights. When Frida next encounters Mine, she is surprised at her decision to remain with her family at the cost of her life. However, she purchases several of Mine's recipes and pays her fairly, since Mine plans to save as much money as she can and leave it behind for her family. Summer baptism arrive and both Mine and Lutz turn 7. She wears Tuli's modified dress and a brand new flower hair ornament to the ceremony, earning high praise from her neighbors. Her doting father carries her all the way to the temple and she walks in with Lutz holding hands. Here's a precious useless detail. When people see them walk in the church together, they say it looks like a little wedding, and Mine's father is dismayed. Now when they enter the temple, Mine is excited to see the High Bishop reading out of a heavy book of scriptures. However, she can't help but burst into laughter when she realizes that the religious prayer pose of this world resembles the Glyco pose that she remembers from Japan. The struggle to keep from laughing makes her collapse, and the priests mistake her trembling laughter for illness and take her to a waiting room to recover. And a fancy one at that, because her dress and her ornament make her look like a rich girl. Mine looks around the temple, trying to find her way back to the main hall. As she explores, she discovers a bookroom filled with scrolls and documents and attempts to rush in, but the room is restricted to members of the clergy, and a magic barrier prevents her from going in. Eagerly, she asks to become an apprentice priestess to be able to read the books in the temple. The Grey Priestess she meets takes her to meet the senior authority of the temple, the High Bishop. Mistaking her for the daughter of a wealthy family, he explains that he can permit her to join the temple in exchange for a sizable donation, which Mine can definitely afford, as all her inventions and products so far have earned her a ridiculous amount of money. At dinner that day, Mine asks her family for permission to become an apprentice priestess. Her father immediately refuses. He explains that the only commoners who join the church are unwanted orphans, and that the life of a Grey Priestess is brutally demanding. He also tells her that she would probably be separated from her family if she were to join the temple. Mine is heartbroken. She can't believe that after finding at last a place where she can read books, her family is forbidding her to do what it takes to have access to them. but eventually she agrees to give her refusal. Lutz escorts Mine back to the cathedral several days later. There, she encounters the high priest, the second highest authority in the church under the bishop. Sorry for the interruption, but I need to clarify here something rather important. There always tends to be some confusion as to who is who, since the names change depending on what medium you're consuming. Subs and dubs use different names, which in some cases also happen to be different than the ones in the light novels. In the anime, this is the high priest, and this is the head priest. High priest and head priest. It's all very confusing because they're both priests. So going forward, I am using the names used in the official English translations of the light novels. The white-robed old man is the high bishop, and the blue-haired guy, who happens to be my husbando, my love, my golden-eyed Adonis, and is the delight of my life, this guy is the high priest. Alright, glad we got that straight. Let's go back to the story. When Mine explains that she can't join the church because she has a devouring and is very frail, the high priest fetches the cathedral's sacred grail to check her mana capacity. Satisfied with the results, they tell her to bring back her parents with her for a secondary discussion. Mine and Lutz later meet with Benno, who scolds her for her thoughtlessness. He tells her that the church sees her as a valuable source of mana due to the recent shortage, and that she is likely to be forced in the church now that it's got its eye on her. He warns her to take all possible precautions to negotiate for better treatment and secure access to her friends and family. Among other things, he tells her that she must ask to be accepted as a blue-robed apprentice rather than a gray-robed one, as that will get her much better treatment, and he drills her on how she needs to negotiate, reminding her that her very life is at stake. Now, before summarizing the final episode of Season 1, I'd like to remind you that if you've enjoyed this video so far, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can get more bookworm-related content in your subscription feed. Comments, likes, and subs take only a few seconds, but they make a world of difference for a small YouTube channel like mine. I really appreciate your support. Mine tells her family about the letter of invitation she was given. She explains that by entering the temple and giving her mana to the church, she could treat the symptoms of the devouring and she could live. And if they negotiate as Benno taught her to, she could get very favorable treatment there. Gunther agrees since it's the only alternative they have to ensure her survival, even though it is quite risky. In fact, Thule is very worried about them trying to negotiate with nobles who are known to be ruthless and who have been known to strike down commoners on a whim. Mine, Gunther, and Aoife go to the temple on the appointed date to meet with the High Bishop and to discuss terms. However, as soon as the old man realizes that her family is not wealthy as he'd initially assumed, he begins treating them arrogantly and demands that Mine be taken from them by force. Her father fights back to protect her, however. The following is what we bookworms call the confrontation at the temple because it is just that epic. The High Bishop calls for more reinforcements, challenging Gunther to take those on, and he threatens him with execution. When Mine hears this, she absolutely loses it and lets her mana go on a rampage. Her eyes turn rainbowy again, her body emits a strange yellow aura, and she force chokes the High Bishop using her magical power, nearly killing him before the High Priest intervenes to stop her. The High Priest reasons with her, reminding her that if she kills the High Bishop, not only she, but her family would suffer the consequences for it, and they all would be executed. At the thought of what could happen to her family, Mine snaps back into reality and regains control of herself. While the bishop is unconscious, the high priest sits down with Mine and her family and apologizes for their previous treatment. He is in awe at how Mine has so much mana and at how she's been able to survive for so long. We learn that she is unique in living past her baptism, as children with the devouring cannot live long without magical tools to drain their excess mana. The high priest listens to their conditions and he agrees to their demands, asking, not ordering her, to join the church. When Aoife, Gunther, and Mine return home, victorious from their negotiations, Thule and Lutz, who were outside waiting for them, greet them joyfully. And that, my dear bookworms, is Season 1. It covers the first 3 volumes of the source material, which you should definitely check out if you have the chance. And while I'm on the subject of the light novels, I'm gonna insert a shameless plug here. Do check out my anime versus light novel videos, where I share with you 10 things from each light novel volume that the anime adaptations did not include. The light novels are really fun, and as much as I love the anime, they really did cut out a lot of fun stuff from the original source material. So do be sure to check them out. All the links to these things are in the description below. Big huge thank you to the fine folks at the Ascendance of a Bookworm Wiki who put together the anime episode summaries and who gave me permission to use them for this video. And I also want to give a shout out to those of you who suggested I make these summaries in the first place, and to all of those who upvoted that suggestions so that it would come to my attention. You're all the best. I will continue the summary for season 2 in the next video. Until later, bye bye.